For 15 years, scientists failed to crack one protein, the secret that lets HIV multiply. But when they turned the problem into a free online puzzle game, random gamers solved it in just 10 days, even beating the fastest supercomputers. Here's how gamers accidentally changed medicine forever. The moment Princess Diana shook hands with an AIDS patient on live TV, the world woke up, and scientists desperately needed to treat the disease. However, HIV doesn't just attack, it hides and mutates. So, scientists zeroed in on a key enzyme of HIV called protease, the molecular scissors that cut the virus into its final infectious form. But there was a problem. To design drugs that jammed those scissors, they needed the exact 3D shape of the protease. X-ray crystallography gave them only blurry low-resolution outlines. The protein simply refused to crystallize properly. Then, they made a breakthrough discovery. Monkeys in research centers were suffering from the same symptoms, so they decided to investigate the truth. Turns out, the monkeys suffered from Mason-Pfizer monkey virus, or MPMV in short, and when they mapped its protease, the 3D shape looked almost identical to HIV, even though the genetic code was completely different. MPMV became the perfect practice dummy to design a drug for AIDS. The idea was that if they could find a molecule to jam the MPMV scissors, it would probably work on HIV. But for 15 years, scientists and even the world's fastest supercomputers failed. They couldn't build a mathematically accurate starting model of the MPMV protease. That's when David Baker had a crazy idea. In the mid-2000s, he launched Rosetta at home, leveraging thousands of home computers to solve the math. However, the computers kept forcing proteins into physically impossible shapes. They lacked the spatial reasoning of a human. So, in 2008, Baker and his team turned the entire problem into a game. They called it Foldit. And it was genius because it didn't require players to understand biochemistry. Anyone could play it. It only required you to follow 3 rules. First, hiding the yellow. In Foldit, yellow blobs represent the hydrophobic parts of a protein, which have to be tucked in the center, and if they were outside, your score dropped. So, players would intuitively tuck them into the core. Next, the red spikes. If the player pushed 2 parts of the protein too close, jagged red spikes appeared. This alerted the player that the shape was physically impossible, and they had to change it. Finally, the red bubbles. If a protein is packed too loosely, red bubbles highlight the empty spaces. Players would then use rubber bands to tighten the structure until the bubbles vanish. This way, the structure would be more stable. However, the real reason supercomputers fail for 15 years is something called local minima. Imagine you are trying to find the lowest point in a mountain range during a fog. A computer walks downhill. If it finds a small valley, it stays there, because a step in any direction goes up. This makes it think it succeeded. However, a gamer can see that to get to a much deeper valley, they first have to climb out of the small valley. Basically, gamers were willing to break their protein and make their score plummet, just to visualize a better way to build it. The problem was that computers weren't programmed to temporarily fail in order to succeed like humans. When Foldit was first launched, the starting model, Puzzle 431, was a total mess. It was based on rough data that scientists already knew was inaccurate. Most players started with something that didn't even resemble a real protein. And the worst part is that they were only given 3 weeks to solve the puzzle. Thousands of gamers logged in, the leaderboard was chaotic, and no matter what they did, the yellow blobs, red spikes, and red bubbles just wouldn't disappear. Everyone was frustrated and confused. But then, something incredible happened. They stopped competing, but collaborated and built on each other's work instead. 2 distinct teams formed, the Foldit Contenders and Void Crushers. These 2 groups exchanged recipes, custom scripts they wrote to automate specific folding patterns, and the Foldit Contenders in particular started making magic. Player SP Vincent took an early model and dramatically improved the core, while player Grabhorn refined it. Then, player Mimi nailed a tricky floppy loop that had been their biggest headache. They worked together like a tag team, passing improved models back and forth, tweaking, breaking, and rebuilding, all while the deadline was closing in on them. The challenge ended, and back in the lab, researchers opened the file sent by the Foldit contenders. They expected another close but not quite result, but instead, what they saw completely shattered their expectations. When they overlaid the gamer's 3D model on the blurry X-ray crystallography data from the 1990s, it was a perfect match. Every atom on the player's model fit the original data, and the most insane part was that the winning model was sent just 10 days into the 3-week challenge. A group of gamers managed to solve a problem that stumped scientists for 15 years in just 10 days, even beating the fastest supercomputers. And the best part? The Foldit players were listed as co-authors on the paper published in Nature, Structural and Molecular Biology. While current treatments like antiretroviral therapy are powerful, the virus is constantly evolving. The Foldit discovery gives scientists a helpful new blueprint for designing the next generation of anti-AIDS drugs, and it proves that humans have something that no machine could ever possess: intuition. The game not only solved one of the greatest mysteries in medicine, but sparked a wave of citizen science games. Eterna allows players to solve puzzles to design stable RNA molecules, and the RNA sequences designed by players are far more stable than those created by top-tier algorithms, potentially paving the way for vaccines that can survive in normal fridges. Stallcatchers allows players to tackle Alzheimer's disease by looking at the brain's plumbing, and players are shown clips of blood moving through a mouse's brain. Now, Alzheimer's is caused by stalls in blood flow or tiny clogs, but AI is really bad at identifying those stalls. So, players managed to provide decades worth of lab analysis in just a few years. Finally, EyeWire allows players to map the human brain. Gamers discovered entirely new types of neurons in the retina that scientists didn't even know existed. They successfully mapped the circuits that allow our eyes to detect motion, solving a mystery that had stumped neuroscientists since the 1960s. The next medical breakthrough isn't waiting in the lab, it's waiting for someone like you to press start.